Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
Hi everybody, how are you? I hope you're well on this wonderful day. I'm just trying to sort something out on my phone. I will be with you in just 1 second. Hi Liam, how are you today in the chat? Hi Odin All Father and Two's Time. I hope you're all very well today. Just bear me a second, I'll have to, yeah.
UK, France and other countries.
Alright, I won't go live on TikTok then. Hi everybody, how are you? I wanted to go live tonight because there's something that I want to talk about that's not Ukraine, because that's all anybody is talking about at the moment, and that's not about the Canadian truckers either, because that's something else that everybody else is talking about. So I just wanted to update you all on something that the media are not talking about, because what they're not talking about is usually way more important than what they are. Let's get straight into it. The United Nations have specialists on things that investigate all sorts of affairs around the world. And one of the specialists they have is a specialist on torture. And the United Nations specialist on torture is a man called Nils Meltzer. And he's just written a book because he's the United Nations specialist, the rapporteur, who has been meeting with Julian Assange and meeting him in prison as well as other places over the last few years. And he wrote a book and had a press conference on Friday, just gone, which is about the 18th of February, just explaining his findings, really, in front of a press conference. And this is from the Morning Star. This is their write-up of this press conference. We're going to go through it. They say, end, quote, deafening silence over the state persecution of Julian Assange in Britain's media, United Nations expert demands. So this is Friday just gone, so we're 4 days past this now. Julian Assange would be free within days if the mass media ended its, quote, deafening silence over the persecution of WikiLeaks founder, a UN expert claimed today. I'll repeat that. Julian Assange would be free within days if the mass media ended its deafening silence over the persecution of the WikiLeaks founder, a United Nations expert claimed today. If they talked about it, he'd be free within 2 weeks. If they talked about it properly, correctly, the way I and many others in the independent media talk about it. It continues, this article does. The United Nations Special Rapporteur, that's the specialist, on torture, Nils Meltzer, accused major news outlets of failing to play their role as the fourth estate to inform the public about the implications of the case against Mr. Assange on press freedom and the rule of law. It's quite a statement, isn't it, from the United Nations specialist on torture, that. The UN official said he had previously believed the press would jump on evidence pointing to, quote, political persecution and gross judicial arbitrariness in the case, but instead he has faced a wall of silence. I've pointed this out many times. If this was going on elsewhere in the world, if this case was going on in China or North Korea or Russia or anywhere else, the media would not stop talking about it. They really wouldn't, but because it's us, they're silent on it. I want to know why. Quote, this man has become so untouchable because of the narrative that has been created, but there is no evidence of that, Mr. Meltzer told a media briefing organised by the Freedom of the Press Association on Friday on his new book, The Trial of Julian Assange. But there is no evidence of that. Who created that narrative, by the way, he's talking about there? This man has become so untouchable because of the narrative that has been created. Who created that narrative? Well, the narrative created was by the very powerful people that Julian Assange held to account with those truths that he published about them. And that narrative has then been spread by a dutiful media doing the powers powers bidding rather than holding it to account. His article continues. The press are not able, Nils continued, the press are not able to play their role as the fourth estate and inform the public about due process violations that are being played here behind the curtains. That really, what I found, is extremely concerning. Mr. Meltzer's book details the findings of his 2-year investigation into Mr. Assange's case. In it, he accuses, just check this out, he accuses Britain, the United States, Sweden and Ecuador of, quote, grave and systematic due process violations, judicial bias and manipulating evidence. Yet the media do not want to talk about that at all. Why? He also accuses the United States and British authorities of colluding to secure a conviction against the WikiLeaks founder. This is 4 nations ganging up on a journalist, colluding with each other to gang up to persecuted journalist with a 100% record of his outlet WikiLeaks having accuracy, a 100% accuracy record. He also accuses them of colluding to secure the conviction against the WikiLeaks founder, who is facing extradition to the United States due to his publication of confidential documents exposing war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nothing that he did was illegal. Nothing. He did the job of a publisher, the same as the Morning Star, New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, Guardian, all of them should do. And by the way, those logs, they were disseminated through the Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, etc., who have all thrown him under the bus as soon as the United States went after him. It's important you should remember that. They were published in the Guardian, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Spiegel. And now those outlets have thrown him under the bus and don't want to talk about his, well, torture. Nils Meltzer continued, if the United States succeeds in prosecuting this man and sending him to a supermax prison for the rest of his life, this will have an enormous, chilling effect on a free press, he warned. It's incredible, isn't it? There's the United Nations specialist on torture saying this man's not only been tortured, but this case is has a huge effect, a chilling effect on free press. And what we're hearing from the media so far is crickets. Following an examination, he concluded that Mr. Assange's treatment was tantamount to psychological torture. Despite the grave findings, Mr. Meltzer said the British authorities have refused to cooperate with him to clear up the allegations or initiate an investigation required by international law, which he described as profoundly shocking. The UK government are flouting international law here. When China and Russia do this, we scream from the rooftops. They're doing it right now over the Ukraine as I speak. Flouting international law, they say, Putin. Well, here's the United Kingdom doing it. Here's the United Nations calling them out on it. And the media are silent. Similarly, he said he was very alarmed by the muted response of the press to his findings. I want you to remember that. He said he was very alarmed by the muted response of the press to his findings. Remember that line. Giving an example, Mr. Meltzer said he had given televised interviews to the BBC and Sky News in 2019 on his report, warning against the extradition of Mr. Assange that was subsequently removed without trace from the web. He gave interviews and then they were removed. What more evidence do you need that they're silent on this? Well, I'll give you some anyway. Listen to this. When he called the BBC to ask why the interview had been taken down, he said he was told that the topic was not newsworthy. What is more newsworthy than a journalist with a 100% accuracy record being psychologically tortured in our version of Guantanamo Bay, Belmarsh, in the UK, for over 1,000 days in solitary confinement and for 7 years arbitrary detention before that in the embassy? What's more newsworthy than that? What's more newsworthy than if he is sent to a supermax prison for the rest of his life, it will have an enormous chilling effect on free press. What's more newsworthy than that? Well, according to the BBC, not newsworthy at all. Mr. Meltzer said, this attitude to me reflects an unwillingness to actually look at the elephant in the room. The silence is deafening. If the main media organisations joined forces, I believe this case would be over within days. So do I. So if you're a journalist and you've been silent on this, or worse, you've been parroting the narrative that the establishment have been pumping out for the last decade, I've got 3 words for you. Shame on you. Shame on you. The media is not here to entertain us, Mr. Meltzer said. It is here to empower us. It is the fourth estate for a reason, and it is important that they keep fulfilling that societal role. The fourth estate is a fundamental column of democracy. If you do not have a robust fourth estate holding power to account, you don't have democracy. You have an oligarchy or a plutocracy. You have what we've got, not a democracy. Mr. Meltzer noted that the BBC had kept the report on its website and in a radio broadcast, but that this would have not achieved the same global impact as the televised interview that they removed. The United Nations official, who has been in his role since 2016, added that there was, quote, no legal basis for keeping Mr. Assange locked up, and the evidence for charges over computer hacking had been, quote, fabricated. What is more newsworthy than that? What is more newsworthy than 4 nations ganging up on a journalist for publishing factual information about one of those nations, a superpower, that proved that they were involved in war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan, elsewhere in the world? What is more newsworthy than him being locked up in this country on, quote, no legal basis, and that the evidence for charges over the computer hacking had been fabricated? Yes, I've explained this many times before. Siggy the hacker, who was the guy that the FBI used to make out that Julian was a hacker, to say that the guy that allegedly, according to the FBI indictment, was asked by Julian to hack into the Icelandic parliament or something like that. Somebody who's Ziggy the hacker, called such because he's never hacked anything. He's admitted that, yeah, that was all fabricated. I spoke to the man who admitted it too, and he said, yeah, I think he conned the FBI. That man, by the way, who they fabricated the evidence with, convicted paedophile and fraudster. That's who the FBI are holding up as their key witnesses. Mr. Assange revealed some of the, quote, most grave crimes committed by governments, Mr. Meltzer added, including the murder of civilians and torture. However, no one has been prosecuted, even with video evidence. Isn't that incredible? You've seen the collateral murder video with that helicopter shooting those innocent people and those 2 Reuters journalists. You've seen them killing those innocent people. You've seen them come around for a double tap, make sure that the survivors were killed. You've seen them shoot on that car, amazingly missing those children inside that van. You've seen this. Yet nobody, not a single person, was prosecuted. Not a single person, not the people in the Apache gunship who was murdering those civilians and journalists, not the people who gave the order. Nobody, not a single person. We found out since that the Afghanistan, everything they told us about the Afghanistan war was a lie. Nobody's been prosecuted for it at all. But the journalist who exposed those lies, who exposed their torture program, he's in jail being tortured himself. What's the saying? When exposing a crime is treated like a criminal act, then you are ruled by criminals. Isn't that where we find ourselves right now? Nils Meltzer continued, that really is shocking when you can see that war crimes are not being prosecuted, but those who expose them are being prosecuted. That displays a systematic problem of enormous proportions. No kidding. Right now they're talking about war crimes over in Ukraine. They've been talking about they're prosecuting people for war crimes in Syria, the Syrian army. Prosecuting them for war crimes. What about our war crimes? What about America's? We know that they're going on. We know that people have lied us into these wars, but nobody's been prosecuted. And right now, they're talking about getting us into another one. We cannot have legitimate dissent and exposure of serious government crimes resulting in impunity for officials and life sentences for witnesses and whistleblowers and journalists. This is extremely dangerous. No kidding. It's why I've been running around with my hair on fire for the last 4 years. Screaming and shouting, but nobody will take a blind bit of goddamn notice. A BBC spokesperson said this, quote, just listen to this. The BBC covered this story on a number of its platforms. An interview with Nils Meltzer was broadcast live on our international news channel, which is available in 465 million homes around the world, and his comments were featured prominently on our news website, which is available both within and outside of the UK. Shall we test that hypothesis? Shall we? Shall we test what they say there? They covered its story on a number of its platforms. They say that they gave it due attention. Okay, let's see, shall we? So this is Google right now, as of today. Now, I know that some people are going to be saying, don't use Google, use DuckDuckGo. I totally agree, don't use Google. This is just using it for, to make an example for, what's the word? Something purposes. My mind's run blank. Anyway, you can see there, this is the latest news on Nils Meltzer. This is just to see who's been covering this story. The top answer in Google is from Scottish Legal News. And we've got an article from the World Socialist website about it. Then we've got this article from the Morning Star. End the deafening silence over state persecution of Julian Assange. Remember, this is what he was claiming. He was saying the media have got to end their silence. And how have the media responded? Well, apart from the Morning Star article and 12 sentences in the Independent, and I'm not kidding you, that's true, 12 sentences. And I'm coming to it in a minute because one of those sentences is a lie. That's it. Nothing on the BBC. Nothing on The Guardian. That's it. I think I found one other. I'll come to that in a minute. This is, if you check right now, I think, as of now. Let me double check it. So this is if you put Assange in. You know, I thought, okay, well, try Nils Meltzer. This is if you put Assange in. Well, you can see the Times have done an article on it, which is this one. And in this article, they say Julian Assange should be released from prison. Now, I'm not going to get past the, I'm not going to subscribe or anything like that. But I'm assuming this article didn't mention that the Special Rapporteur on Torture was calling on the media to end their silence over him. They didn't mention that in this article. They did that yesterday. And that's it. This article in the Independent, the 12 sentences, here they are, look. 12 sentences, that's it. Right at the very end here. They lie. Blatantly. They say Mr. Meltzer claimed there was, quote, a wall of silence surrounding the treatment of Mr. Assange, saying he has been shocked by the lack of response from the public. From the public. He's been shocked. They say Mr. Meltzer is shocked from the lack of response from the public. Really? Mr. Meltzer said that, did he? Let's check. Let's check what Morning Star said. The press are not able to play their role as a fourth estate and inform the public about due process violations that are being played here behind the curtains. That really is what I found extremely concerning. Now, he's talking about the press. He hasn't talked about the people at all, has he? The United Nations official said he had previously believed the press would jump on evidence pointing to, quote, a political persecution and gross judicial arbitrariness in the case, but instead he has faced a wall of silence. So you can see there, Nils Meltzer blamed the press for their wall of silence, and the way the media, the press, reacted to that was to lie and say that he blamed the public. They're proving our point. The media are proving his point. The silence is deafening. Same on Twitter. If you go into Twitter, search on Twitter, there's nothing. There's WikiLeaks have tweeted it out. There's some people tweeting out the articles from the Morning Star. But that is it. That's it. That's all that's been written. Compare that to this. Julian Assange is a political prisoner. We know this. The BBC know this. Pretty much everybody knows this. Somebody else they say is a political prisoner is Alexei Navalny, the supposed opposition in Russia, even though I think he's got about 4% approval or 4% support. Anyway, look how many articles the BBC will write about Navalny just in the last year. I'm just going to scroll down here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10. Here's another 10. There's another 10. All in the last year. See? There's another 10. Look at that. Did you see that one then? That was about somebody saying Putin critic Alexei Navalny will not die in prison. Yeah? People have been saying that Julian Assange is going to die in prison though in the last year, but they're not reporting on that. No. So that's 3 pages of articles. Well, here's 4 pages of articles. I would like Russia to be more free, says Navalny. Russia names Golos Monitor as foreign agent. Obviously talking about Navalny back there. So now we're skipping, we're past the headlines, but you can see, look at all the times the BBC have been mentioning him. And like I say, this is just in the last year. We've got 4 pages there. Past year, 5 pages. This is the 5th page. And again, we're still on. They're still writing about him, look. They keep mentioning, they can't stop mentioning Navalny, who they say is a political prisoner in Russia. Let's have a look at the political prisoner in London. See how many articles the BBC write about him in the last year, shall we? Because obviously he's had the case over here in the last year. It was just over a year ago that he had the case at the magistrates finished, but since then he's had a case at the High Court, and there's all the stuff about the Supreme Court, and there's obviously him, there's way more, isn't there, to talk about when you think about it. When you think about Siggy the hacker, we found out that his evidence to the FBI was all fabricated. We found out that, oh yeah, the CIA were planning to kidnap and kill Assange in the centre of London. We found that out just in the last few months. That was the Yahoo News story based on, I think, 20 or 40 ex-CIA, FBI, NSA, ex-spooks. Let's see, shall we? 5, 6 pages, 60 articles about Navalny. Well, this is about Assange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 articles, 7 articles, 8 articles. And then we get into the foreign languages. That's weird, isn't it? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 articles in the last year, plus a link to just 6 articles, plus a link to the Global News podcast. And then we're into the foreign language articles. 6 pages on Navalny, 6 total on Assange. Now, obviously, that doesn't tell the whole story, because when they talk about Navalny, they talk about it non-stop. And it will be in the 6 o'clock broadcast, the 12 o'clock broadcast, the 4 o'clock broadcast, and then the news broadcast over and over and over and over. And there's 35,000 employees at BBC, and they're all around the world, like I say, 456 million listeners, etc. Over and over and over, they will talk about Navalny. Whereas with Assange, they scrub it from the internet whenever they do a talk about it. They're proving our point, aren't they? The media's silence on this is deafening. There's a journalist in the centre of London, in prison, in the worst prison in this country, where we keep our worst kind of criminals, rapists and murderers and terrorists. And we're keeping a journalist down there in solitary confinement and have been torturing him for over 1,000 days. And he's there having committed no crime whatsoever. The bail jumping crime, I can hear people say, oh, he jumped bail. First of all, it was a ruse to get him into custody so they could unseal the indictment in America. We know that because that's exactly what happened as soon as he was in custody. As soon as he was in custody, within a matter of days, matter of hours, the indictment was unsealed. A few weeks later, more charges. Month later, more charges. And then guess what? The Sweden investigation, there were never any charges, is closed for a final time. Nobody's talking about Sweden anymore, are they? Eh? It's disgusting what our country is doing to this journalist. And it's our country. And we're doing it on behalf of another country. Why? Why is it that why are we torturing a journalist on our shores for another country? Why? What does that other country have on us? What are they telling us we have to do? And why is our media silent on it? This is their profession that they don't give a shit about. I have an idea as to why they're silent on it. Some of them will be scared. Some of them will hate the repercussions, because let's face it, look at what they've done to Assange. But most of them, they're doing this for their own self-interests. They're journalists for their own self-interests. They're not journalists to give people the truth. They're not. If that was the case, they would be doing that. If that was the case, they would be talking about Julian Assange, but they're not. They know that if they do start talking about Julian Assange, and I'm talking all of them, any of them at the Mirror, at the Sun, at the Guardian, you know, all of you liberals out there, you love the likes of Owen Jones and George Monbiot. I've asked George Monbiot on my podcast. I've asked him on. Won't come on. Won't talk about Julian Assange. Won't talk about Syria. Won't even talk to somebody who has questions about it. He'll attack pro-Assange journalists, though. I noticed him attacking John Pilger the other day. They know as soon as they start talking about Assange, as soon as they start talking about Julian Assange in a truthful way, their money goes bye-bye. All of a sudden, you know, they don't get articles printed, and all of a sudden, their stuff's not quite right for the paper, and maybe we've looked at, you know, we're going to go different ways. And how do I know that? Look at every single journalist, pro-Assange journalist that was at The Guardian. Where are they now? They're not at The Guardian, are they? The Guardian, who destroyed all those computers in their basement. That's, you know, all those documents that they had from the Snowden leaks, from the Snowden releases. doing the bidding of GCHQ, who are obviously doing the bidding of CIA. We are ruled by monsters who do not care about you. Right now, I can see people arguing with each other on Twitter over Ukraine. Why? Most of these people couldn't point to Ukraine on a map. They could, if they wanted to, force the media to talk about this, but they're not, though. I am fed up. I am really fed up of looking at people who are doing this for their own self-interest and not talk about Julian Assange. I'm fed up of it. I'm fed up of our media going along with it, going along with the torture and the psychological torture of a journalist whose only crime is telling the truth. It sickens me. It absolutely sickens me. Look, this is the BBC website. Look how long it takes for me to get, to 2020, because it goes in sort of like reverse chronological order. This does. There's a few things in and out of place, but look, second page, 2021, 2021, 2021, 2021, all these 2021, all about Navalny. Look at all these articles that the BBC have written about Navalny in the last year. Look at it. Talking about Navalny protests. I haven't talked about an Assange protest once, and I know there's been plenty because I've been to them in the last year. I haven't talked about that once. And that's stuff that affects the law over here. Law! They're not talking about it. It affects actual democracy. Not talking about it. Russia, oh, let's type another article about Russia. Oh. 4 pages, still in 2021. Still in 2021. Finally, on the 5th page, like I said, you can see here, 5 pages on Google, it's accurate. Now let's do the Assange again. Well, that's 2017. It's 2020. So this is the new stuff. So January. You can see here, 2021. 2021, 2021, 2021, 2021, 2020. And that's it. You see there's another couple of articles there. But that's it. All of a sudden we're in 2019. The BBC in this country are charged with doing 3 things: entertaining, educating, and informing the public. Do you think they're informing or educating the public on this case? And while they're propagandizing you and not telling you the truth about this, and, you know, let's face it, complicit in the torture of a journalist. And I mean that. The BBC, The Guardian, The Times, The Independent, all of these outlets are complicit in the torture of a journalist in London. The torture of a political prisoner in London. Meanwhile, the media won't talk about it. They won't talk about it. They're complicit. I want to know why. I want to know why our MPs are so scared to say anything about it. I want to know why our media are so scared to say anything about it. Why are we doing this on behalf of America? Why? Are we shutting him up because of secrets he could be telling us right now? I mean, think about it. He's been silent now for almost 3 years. Over 3 years. 4 years probably now. Look at what's happened in the last 4 years. Wouldn't it have been pretty incredible to have Julian Assange there telling us the truth over the last 4 years? Eh? And isn't it convenient that he wasn't? While the media are silent on it all. Remember what the BBC said? This is what the BBC said. This is what the BBC said with regards to their coverage of Assange. A BBC spokesperson said the BBC covered this story on a number of its platforms. That's the story of Nils Meltzer finding that we're torturing a journalist in the middle of London. An interview with Nils Meltzer was broadcast live on our international news channel. Sure talking about Navalny a lot, though, aren't they? All right, everybody. I just wanted to go live today and talk about that because somebody's got it. Somebody's got it. Nobody else is. I keep emailing my MP, but you just get a wall of nonsense from them. It doesn't matter that I'm giving her evidence, really. It doesn't matter that I'm giving her evidence that the FBI fabricated this stuff in their indictment, giving her evidence that the CIA drew up sketches to kidnap and kill him in the middle of London, whilst at the same time saying, pinky swearing, that they won't torture him if he gets extradited. And they don't want to know. If you're a journalist or an MP in this country and you're not screaming from the rooftops about this, I want to know why. I want to know who it is that you serve. Because right now, your silence is treacherous. You're a traitor. Free Julian Assange. Tarot Man, thanks very much for the super chat, mate. Thank you. All right, I'm going to, I'm going to get off. Thank you so much for all your support, everybody. Please support independent media. Thank you, Matt Black. £10 in the super chat. I really appreciate your support, everybody. The reason they don't do this, the reason the media don't do this is because they know it doesn't pay. You think anybody at The Guardian's struggling to pay their fucking rent? Eh? You think anybody at the fucking Guardian's got 18 months rent backlog? You think anybody at the fucking Guardian's been, I don't know, paid an average of about $4,000 in the last 4 years? Of course not. They've got fucking hundreds of thousands of pounds. Why? Because they don't talk about Assange. They know which way their bread is buttered. And that is not a journalist. That's a propagandist. And if you don't get rid of these fucking people, you will lose your democracy. You've lost it already. You've got no chance of getting it back. All right, I'm going to get off, people. Thanks very much. Please support independent media. Go to the website, find out ways you can support me. Write to your MP about Julian Assange. Please write to your fucking MP. Go to the Assange Defence website, to WikiLeaks website. They'll automate it for you. We've got to try and do something to get behind this person because the media are not doing it. They're not going to do it. They will talk endlessly about Navalny and Novichok. What a joke. What a joke. Why would you poison somebody with the one thing that could be pointed straight back at you? Why? But torturing a journalist on our own shores for doing nothing but telling the truth, not newsworthy. I see them. I see these journalists right now talking about Ukraine, talking about, oh, if Putin goes in. Listen to us. Listen to this buffoon. Listen to him. Just remembered this. I want to show you this because this is something that wound me up like you wouldn't believe. It's from the BBC. They're talking about Russia here. And Boris Johnson is obviously saying that it's planning the biggest war in Europe since 1945. All right? Look what he said down here. People need to not only consider the potential loss of life of Ukrainians, but also of young Russians. Okay? What do you think I would have, if he said that to me and I was standing in front of him, what do you think I would have said to him? So you care about the loss of life of Ukrainians and Russians. What about the loss of life of Yemenis? There wouldn't be a plane in the sky bombing Yemen right now if we withdrew our support for Saudi Arabia from them. Wouldn't be a plane in the sky. Yemen is the largest humanitarian crisis on the planet. Half the country starving to death. Largest outbreak of cholera ever. It's 2020. In 2020 it was. Largest outbreak of cholera ever. Hundreds of thousands have died. Millions have displaced. What about them? Do you think Boris Johnson cares about the actual loss of life there? He's pretending he cares about imaginary losses of life here. But they don't care about Yemen. What about Syria? Do you think they care about all the thousands that have been killed in Syria? What about the Golan Heights? Yeah? What about the fact that, I don't know, we're stealing their oil, or at least America are. When I say America, I mean, you know, Genie Energy with Rothschild and Murdoch on the board. By the way, me saying Rothschild, that's not an anti-Semitic trope. He's on the board of Genie Energy, a company who is extracting oil, I think it is, from the occupied Golan Heights in Syria and making a fortune from it, along with Rupert Murdoch, and nobody in the media wants to talk about that. Illegally occupying it and stealing their resources, and nobody in the media talks about that. What about the loss of life over there as a result? What about the loss of life, I don't know, Palestinians? Should we talk about them? Should we talk about the fact that, I don't know, Amnesty International has called Israel an apartheid state? No, we won't talk about any of that. We'll be scared about the potential loss of life of Ukrainians and Russians in Europe. $30,000 innocent people, they say, were killed in Afghanistan in that 20-year war. 30,000. Do you think anybody gave a shit about their lives? Do you see how they will talk about things when it suits them and then ignore it when they don't? It was a great tweet. I'll show it before I go. $20 from summer of 1970. Thanks, Gordon. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Ricky Hale. If we're against annexation, why aren't we sanctioning Israel? If we're against illegal laws, why aren't we supplying bombs to Saudi Arabia? If we oppose brutal dictators, why are we training the military of Cameroon? Incredible double standards from Britain and America. It's all we've got though, isn't it? Double standards. If you're a journalist and you're not talking about Julian Assange for any reason, shame on you, you fucking propagandizing piece of shit. I'm fucking serious. For any reason, you're not talking about it now. Whilst he's dying in prison, we're killing him, and you don't give a fucking shit. You would rather attack pro-Assange journalists than tell the truth about one of your own. All right, I'm going to go, everybody. Thanks very much for all your support. Thanks for all the super chats. I shall be back tomorrow, the day after, I suppose, with hopefully some better news. But I have to keep talking about this. I fucking have to. It doesn't matter what it does to my fucking mental health. I don't give a shit. Somebody has to talk about it, and our media aren't. And if you're not talking about this, fucking shame on you. Shame on you. Take care, everybody.